we were told, for example, you can't shoot unless you see a weapon pointed at you. Not just carrying a weapon around, you have to have it pointed at you. So that made it a little bit more difficult. We expected crowds, so instead of using tear gas, we had to use these little rubber grenades that threw out little rubber balls, like riot control grenades. So they threw a lot of heavy-duty rules of engagement on us. Yes, we did ask for an AC-130 to go along with it. They said no, too much firepower. So there was a lot of restrictions thrown about us. We kept 2 snipers on those 2 assault 160s, and the reason we did that is they were there to do the precision surgical shooting at anyone pointing a weapon at us. That's why we had to fly around the target once we got out there, was to provide precision surgical fires for the guys on the ground. I know it sounds bad, but those were the rules of engagement we had. So, but I'll tell you this, once the main operation kicked off on 3 October and we lost the first Black Hawk, the rules of engagement went out the door and we were back to normal free fire. So those same Black Hawks also have miniguns on board, so 2,000 to 4,000 rounds a minute, and it really helps. And then we use the AH-6s primarily in the beginning part just to suppress mortar fire against the airfield. Later on, they were very, very effective on 3 October. And then again, we tried to use human as much as possible, human intelligence to find the enemy before we went out the gate. As you can see, 3 October wasn't the first operation. We did a bunch of operations before that, so at least 6 other operations happened before 3 October. So we were staying busy, not as much as we were later on in Iraq, but at this part we're staying fairly busy with targeted information. And we did capture on 21 September Osman Otto, which was one of the primary planners for Mohammed Adi. The helos were able to be guided in on the car that he was driving on. As we approached it, we had some of the guys with snipers on board, shot the engine block out, also hit the driver, but we got the engine block stopped the car. He ran into a nearby building, dropped one of the assault birds off. They went ahead and captured him, and we exfilled out. So the whole mission itself took about maybe 20 minutes total. Here's the car, comes up, we disable the car with sniper fire. We put just the little birds and 1 assault bird in to capture them. And in this particular case, the bird landed on a rooftop instead of fast roping. Allows us to get off quicker, but also allows us to exfil easier as well. So that one was pretty good. We exfil both Otto and the driver. That's where we eventually captured him out, and then exfilled him back to the airfield, where he was then handed over to the international folks to take care of. Now on this one, so what had happened on 2 October, we started getting intel about a potential meeting. So we start doing surveillance of the source. The source leads us to this place, this hotel that they were going to have a meeting. It's going to be 12 of Aidid's key lieutenants were going to have a meeting. Now this area of Mogadishu is called the Black Sea. So it's a very, very rough area, deep in the heart of Aidid's territory. So absolutely no friendlies in the whole area. So it is the key part of Aidid's area. So the plan was going to look like this. 1 Black Hawk, the first assault bird, was going to go in there. The 4 little birds were going to come there. And then the second Black Hawk was going to go in there. The reason we do this is we want to surround the building and prevent them from squirting out. That's kind of how we call it, from people running away from the particular target area. We knew once we landed, we weren't coming back in to land again to pull everybody out. And you'll see a video in a second of just how bad it is for the helos to fly in there. Second one makes it. Third one will have to go around and come back in. Notice the dust being blown up. So for any of the folks that are pilots or have dealt with it, the dust made it very, very, very difficult. Those are the gunbirds you see on the bottom side flying around. Here comes the second one that missed his infill. He's coming back in now to drop off his packs. So the little birds are starting to pick up and take off. That Blackhawk is still there because there's 15 assaulters trying to get on 2 ropes to get down there to get onto the target. That's what I'm saying. It takes a long time to pull these folks down on the target. He's now done. He's starting to get them out. Notice that little puff. There was an RPG that went off near one of the birds. The other thing I noticed is I'm flying around in the search and rescue bird, waiting just in case. All the other assaults we noticed when the birds went in, people were running away from the target. And this particular day, people are running towards the target. That wasn't a good sign right there. Here come the ranger birds to put their folks in. Unfortunately, at this point, and one of the rangers, as he was going in on the infill, missed the rope and fell about 30 feet and broke his back on infill. So we have our first casualty. So now we're rushing in to get the ground reaction force in to start pulling him out, as well as the 12 that we captured on target. We captured all 12 of the targets that we were going after, all the ID's lieutenants. Sorry, the camera's looking around for where that fire is coming from, so you kind of miss what's going on the target right now, but he's doing what he's supposed to, which is looking for any threats to the air assault aircraft. And then you can see the rest of us there. I lost Dan Bush. He was the one that was killed on the initial infill when the little bird came and picked him up. So that was kind of the casualty total there. And Jim Smith was the other one that was on the ground initially. He got pulled out from the target site at the very initial part. Again, some of the lessons learned. Again, this will look familiar to some of you all as well. Again, the things that we learned, strong point in urban terrain. Never stop in an intersection. The fire comes from 4 directions. Stop before or after. That way you only have to worry about fire coming from 2 directions. That was a big one to learn. And then medical training. The other thing, we were still operating on a little bit different rules. We went in with basically skateboard helmets. But they worked well for holding NVGs, and it didn't really strain your neck too much. After that, we stole a bunch of the SEAL helmets, the Kevlar ones, and started getting smart on that. Medical training. We used to do quite extensive realistic medical training. Nobody quote me on this. We called it Goat Lab. And that tended to be the most realistic stuff you could do, and it ended up saving a lot of lives that day. So we kept our training as good as possible. We allowed for a lot more trust and flexibility in our leadership. So even when communications broke down, we knew how to work things. We knew how each other worked, and so we were able to continue on and come up with plans that way out survived the initial plan that we had. So all of it worked out quite well in the end, considering what we were up against. And this is the crash site I was at. This was done about 20 years later. We, let's just say some U.S. friends went in there while Mogadishu is still not a great area, and put in a little wreath that says, "We remember 3 October 93. So the helo is still buried underneath there. Now this is now gone, and the engine hub and the rotor from that crash bird is now in a museum in Fort Bragg. So that was able to be recovered. We had some pretty darn great Americans pay a good sum of money to get that out of there, and it's all back now in the States. And I'll open it up for any questions anybody may have. Effect. This is when we started seeing CNN on the street, filming some of the bodies being dragged to the street. That really did not make us happy. We used some normal language because we have some children in here. So we were very upset about that. Also then, the politicians took over, because remember I said we basically eliminated them as a fighting force. They were done. And then next thing you know, we're making deals with ID, and I'm like, let's just say I had some snipers thinking about sitting up in the tower of the airfield as he came in, just to make sure that he wouldn't be able to negotiate anymore. But we calmed down and didn't end up doing that. But it was a thought that ran through some guys' minds at that time. So that was another thing that we learned. A lot of people ask me, would the AC-130 have made a difference? Would M1 tanks or Bradleys have made a difference? Honestly, no. It's just a very difficult situation. The little birds were our saving grace. They're the ones that did the majority of the slaying during that 17 hours, and they were invaluable. And to give you an example of how those pilots flew, they would expend all their ammunition, rush back to the airfield to the FARP, which is Forward Arm and Refueling Point. They would hit the FARP, get stuff, grab a sandwich, drink a pot of coffee, do their bodily functions, jump back in and take off again. They flew for 17 hours. Didn't shut the birds down once. So that was one of the things that really made a big difference for us. But again, a lot of things that we learned, and then we also noticed a lot of the politicians taking over at that point, and you learned then and it influenced a lot of our operations later on. So as I'm going into doing operations in Afghanistan, doing operations in Iraq, I learned a lot of lessons. I made sure that we didn't repeat them. So it was a tough lesson to learn, but we made sure to fully utilize the best out of it.
Did you get wounded when you
I'm sorry?
Did you get wounded?
Yes, sir. I got hit by a shrapnel from RPG in the upper back. It wasn't nothing much. No, I stayed. I decided to stay when the rest of the squadron rotated out, because we were basically, in effect, that they brought in A Squadron, and I stayed to give A Squadron lessons learned. So that's how important it was for me to talk to the next squadron and say, here's what you need to do, here's all those things I just talked about, all the things I made sure A Squadron was fully aware of. It took a couple of days. We've been working with several of the other clans, and we finally got back the missing and the captive. So Mike Durant was returned, and we made sure to get him home. He was beaten up pretty bad, but we got him back home and everything, and we recovered Randy and Gary and all the rest. So we didn't leave until we got him out. A couple of our guys, as soon as we got back, were immediately running into the city on their own, working networks, trying to figure out where they're at. And we were not sleeping. As soon as I got back to the airfield, I reloaded magazines and ready to get back into the fight again, because we knew we had missing out there. We weren't going to stop till we got them back. And then once we got them all back, then A Squadron came in, a new Ranger company came in, rotated all of us out, more helos came in, and so we reconstituted the force. We were ready to go again and still keep pounding them. Politicians then stepped in, had different ideas. Yes, sir. They didn't learn the lesson from what you all had to go through. That was the big thing. They failed to learn the lesson. And the problem is, Colin Powell was right there. He was one of the guys that was with you. You think he would have learned, but he didn't. So we suffered through that same kind of problems that you had. But we were ready to go. We were ready to keep going.
How were you in combat?
I think that lesson's been learned, and I think you just noticed it on a recent raid into Iran. Any other things? Questions, comments? Thank you all for listening. I appreciate it.